G'day friends, welcome to this journal flip. This is going to be huge. Let's go back to 2020. This is Burtonville, the original Burtonville workshop that we did for Virtual Voyage 2. Can you believe it? That was the second one we did. We're up to 9 at present when I'm flipping this. So this is 2020, right at the end of the year. We were still in the pandemic. And so there's a lot in here that, I don't know, might throw us back into that time period, so be warned. But I'm excited to dive in because we have 5 signatures. This was back when I was doing them in signatures. I've since switched up a little bit of how I do it now. But I just want to go through the whole thing with you because it's Halloween time and I feel like this is a great journal to kind of flip through. Well, 5 journals. I always meant to get them bound together, but I was going to do the whole thing and then I was going to just do one at a time and then I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I never did anything. So that's just the way that goes. I'll try and remember absolutely everything. There might be some things I've missed. If you were a part of Burtonville, the original Virtual Voyage 2, it's still available on my website, on my Teachable. So if you want to go and join it, you can join it. But I'm sure I shared lots of this information with you then. We usually do a big journal flip at the end of each of the virtual voyages. So most people who are in that course have already seen this, but I only just realized recently that there are a ton of journals I've never flipped before on YouTube. I take for granted that I share them with you on Instagram or I share bits and pieces here and there, but they never actually stop, film the whole thing and show you. So I want to go through it. Just extra content, more for you to watch, I guess. This was my lettering to actually come up with the kind of word mark, the font, the little graphic that would say Burtonville when I put it on the website. And I believe we ended up going with that one. Don't quote me on that. No, I'm sure it's this one. It might be that one, but I think it's this one. I just did it with a brush pen, good old Pentel pigment black brush pen. Here is a layout. Sometimes I did this, sometimes I didn't. It depended on how much I wanted to lay out the course. The interesting thing about me flipping my journals is a lot of it is how the course is made, and a lot of it is the prep for the workshop as well. So some things are lessons that ended up in there, but other things are prep for lessons or random little bits and pieces I gathered along the way, and I would put them into my journal because it was all about, the process for me too. So my journals are a little bit behind the scenes and a little bit what the actual course was. It's never a great reflection of what you'll actually end up doing. So I always encourage you to check the hashtags on Instagram and see the other students' work to know what you'll actually end up doing. But I planned this one out kind of page by page, what I wanted to accomplish for the workshop, what I wanted the journal to look like at the end. I thought this is the body of work that I want the students to be able to create. I always go in very loose because it's a live workshop. This one I think was 2 weeks long, which was the first time we did that. It was kind of quick, much quicker than I anticipated. And so I wanted to make sure that I could pace out the lessons, but also that I had accounted for the fact that, what would people show for this once they were finished, and if they finished all the coursework, which is kind of a rarity in Virtual Voyage. But anyway, I wanted to plan all that out, and as I say, go in loosey-goosey, because if I feel like the vibe kind of changes with the group, I want to make sure I can be flexible enough to change lessons. So not everything planned out page by page actually made it, but a fair few things did. There wasn't a lot that I took out and switched for. I still remember this and I tried to make this work so badly, but I didn't, so it is what it is. Also, I came back and did a what if Tim Burton did mermaid type thing, and I was doing all kinds of Tim Burton inspired mermaids. I should say this whole workshop was inspired by Tim Burton and his concept art for his movies and his stories and everything that he does. So this is why it all has that Tim Burton aesthetic. We dove so deep into it and it was just the best time. So that's why we did Burtonville 2 all these years later, but I just loved it. So there's a whole bunch of Tim Burton mermaids in there as well. Everything is referenced and inspired by, so just want to make sure that's super clear. A lot of the time when I do that with artists, I'll do a style files, which essentially pulls apart a lot of the relative information that I personally find. So it's kind of subjective. A lot of it is the work that I like, and I'll pick apart that information and I'll see what repeats itself and I'll kind of notate it down, and then I'll make some really fun style files, mostly for myself to be able to reference in the future. If I ever find I'm drawing a blank or I need to reference something specifically, I'll just come back to my Tim Burton one, I'll go back to my Mary Blair one, I'll go back to my Runa Naito one. All of my favorite artists, at this point, I pretty much have a style files guide on. And this one was actually really good. I reference this one all the time. This is one of the most useful ones that I have. And ironically, it's for this pattern, these little pattern blocks. Because I always forget, Tim Burton is stripes to me, but there are a bunch of other patterns that I just need to quickly reference. So that is great for that. But it just goes through, patterns that I feel like I saw a lot, motifs that I felt like repeated, and a word association sometimes really helps. German expressionism, big dark eyes, scribbles, anthropomorphism, stuff like that really helps me to kind of get in the headspace, and just it's good to put in the back of my brain when I want to work with that. So this was all good, and this was our embarkation day lesson. We did a style generator. So we're essentially putting in this plain figure and then generating different Tim Burton-esque characters depending on which of these kind of choose your own adventure numbers you picked. There was so much about this course that I thought was so fun. I would love to redo this one, and I think that's why I did Burtonville 2, but it's something about the original that I think, maybe because it was the first time and I was just so excited to share it all. I loved 2 as well, but I feel like this one was so much more, what can I say, like, it was very base level. I feel like it was all like the general stuff, which in Burtonville 2, we kind of already assumed that was assumed knowledge. So we moved on to other things. It was good. Maybe they're just always too short. 2 weeks just feels too short for some of this stuff. But it's a long time when you consider Halloween, the lead up to Halloween. You don't usually have a ton of extra time. Anyway, I'm getting off track. This was, it was pet portraits and self-portraits. So these were super fun as well. I should just stop saying it was all fun. It was all fun. The end. These were the cats. This is Bianca. This is Oliver. A particular note, our black cat Bianca has a white bikini. So she's actually got a stitched bikini on here, which is such a subtle little thing, but is absolutely my favorite. And Oliver has orange stripes. He's peaches and cream. So I gave his stripes a stitched effect as well. It was kind of hard because we're working in grayscale, so I had to balance off that she's black, he's white, he has orange stripes, she has a white bikini, and so it was nice to kind of work with all of that. I love the black and white of Tim Burton. It's a really great way to minimize your supply list for the workshop. You didn't really have to have a lot. If you had some, pens and a brush pen, you were pretty much good to go. And this was moi. I did that, and I did it of myself, and I loved it. I loved these. A lot of people submitted these. We have parts of the workshop where you can submit your work and just share it with everybody. And a lot of people share in there because it's a closed space in there. But then a lot of people also share on social media and publicly. And it's always funny to see which lessons people feel more encouraged to share, because typically it's not ones where you do self-portraits. But this one was the one where I saw the most people publicly share their self-portraits. And I think it was just a fun, quirky way to, find a representation that felt a lot more exciting and, less vulnerable to share, because Tim Burton is quirky and it's supposed to be a little bit odd looking. And I think a lot of people liked that. I certainly liked it. This was my family portrait. So that's me, that's Steve, that's Bianca, that's Oliver. We did the family portrait. This was a part of the content. Usually, back in those days, this was the second virtual voyage we did. So I didn't really have a process that I thought, was what I did every time yet. I was still kind of working out what I was going to leave from the first one, what I was going to add to the next one. And so we did portraits for the first one, but this one I actually wanted to do a video of kind of like the behind the scenes and putting together this portraits, but this was a part of the content. So I don't think we've done this again since. This was kind of a one-off thing for Burtonville 1, but we just wanted to have some Tim Burton-esque family portraits done, and Steve did them, and he did them in the lounge room. We set up the backdrop, had the cats pose for the 2 seconds after they got their treats. Oliver was dead on. Bianca was a lot more difficult to pose. And yeah, I painted that jacket. That choker you'll see come up in the journal. This was one of the journals that I documented everything. If I could put it in, it went in. Like the lashes are in there as well. Everything is stuck in this journal. But it was really fun. There was a video I did years ago called She Leapt Off the Page, and it was originally a project I did in the Jane Davenport, design team, like way back in 2017. So every now and again I would document this process, because it was actually a collaborative kind of creative process that I would do with Steve. This is my husband, Steve. He's a photographer, and so it was one of those things that we could work on together, and I would always love to share that process because it was a part of my creativity as well. And we still do it to this day. I don't really document a lot of it anymore on YouTube, but a lot of the times I'll share it on my Insta stories when we go and do shoots together, and especially if they're really creative, I love to share some of that. Just another little creative outlet for me. So there was some portraits. But then we have other portraits that were for the costumes, because we did portraits to document the live parties, but that was just a specifically different thing. There's some more of them there. Here was some backdrop from one of the parties, these bats. Some Beetlejuice collage. There's one of those mermaids again. Another collage. Timmy's tall totem and Delia's hideous sculptures. When I do, there's lots of different types of content in Virtual Voyage. So if I gave out printables, usually, I don't think there's ever a time I haven't done this, but usually I will have a photo documentation, like a step-by-step photos of how I use the printables, which I know it seems like a given, and when I do my collage club online, I kind of just put them out there and people just choose to do what they want to do with them. But that's one of those things that I feel like is an extra bit of content that, you know, kind of deserves to be in these workshop spaces and these, you know, much more in-depth tutorial-based space, you know, offerings that I do that I wouldn't typically do, you know, on YouTube. Or you can't, like, I can't really upload all these photos to YouTube. So that's just something that I do in workshops that is a little bit more extensive and a little bit more guided, and you get a lot closer of a look at how all of those things happen. Even though you can see them online, you can see them on YouTube, you've seen me collage before, I like to provide, you know, a lot more guidance in the workshops, even if it's something really, really simple like this. So that is that on the collage sheets. Some more of the pictures. I really printed all of these out, and this just goes to show how much issues I'm having with my printer right now, because my printer would not be doing this quality at this point. It's not even printing black at this point, so we've got issues. The Burton birthday bash, fun fact, one of the parties we threw fell on Steve's birthday, his actual birthday, October 16th. So he shared that with us. I don't know if that was his ideal way to share the birthday, but it was 2020, so he was going to be in the house anyway. We did these flower arranging, these ikebana, and I loved it. I thought this was one of my favorite lessons. It was so simple, but there's a worksheet in there that has a lot of the other examples. I just think they came out so effectively, and it was such an easy lesson to personalize. I've always been really keen on teaching a lot of what I know and what I understand and what I enjoy, but also trying to make sure that it's really simple enough for people to personalize and make their work a little bit more unique. I have no problems with people copying the lessons, you know, step for step. I don't care if it looks exactly the way that I did it. In fact, if that's what you wanted to do and achieve, then that's success in a student's book, right? So I don't really mind any of that. That is the purpose of me teaching, is that you'll have success the way you want to have it. But a lot of people are keen to make things a little bit more unique, or to show that they've got a little bit of a creative thought that they added into it. And so I'm always trying to think of ways where in the lesson you could really simply step off the path that I'm teaching and add your own little spin to it. So a lot of the time it involves a lot of choice. Like, I'll teach all the different bits and pieces, but the way you piece it together will be your own selections. And that way we get a lot of variety. It's also really fun to see what people choose, because it's constantly reaffirming that we can all be given the same source material, we can all be given the same lesson, we can all be told to do exactly the same things, but there's an element of, you know, being uniquely you that ends up showing through anyway. So that's a big theme in the way I like to teach and how the lessons look. It's also probably why if you go looking at the hashtag, you'll be looking for what the lesson is, but you'll see about 16 different slightly the same versions. It's because usually I've told people to make some creative independent choices, which I think is great. It's you want to feel like you're getting the information and you're actually processing it, and that you can use it, not that you're just blindly following. I think it's always great if you're relatively new and you're feeling a little bit beginner. It's great to blindly follow, but eventually you will build on that confidence and you'll want to start making those choices. So this is Fonsters, a step-by-step little tutorial over here. So basically it's a bunch of elements. Big eyes, scribble ears, teeth in the overlap. You can see here I've used it with letters, so we were all going to do our own names. And when I did James, just for instance, that teeth in the overlap, I would bubble letter J and then put the head shape over the top. Wherever the head intersected with that line of the letter, I would add the teeth. So that's teeth in overlap. So no matter which way you did it, if you did the circle over here at the top of the A, you did this square-shaped heads on top of the M, that's where the teeth would go on the overlap. So it's almost like this process style of trying to, like production line style, you know, you do these steps these ways each time, even if all the elements are slightly changing. There's kind of a process to it. 3 buttons, so everything here has got 3 buttons. Doesn't really matter where you put them as long as they're there. And they're kind of like a style guide standard, which is a way that I work a lot of the time if I'm making a whole collection of pieces that I want to look uniform, or I want to look like they're kind of all of the same family, the same style. So I'll have these set of standards that I'll work with, and I'll just kind of replicate. Even when I change, you know, the head shapes are all different. The letters of the body are all different. But some things, you know, you just always keep the striped legs, and it builds uniformity into it. So I really like that. I actually really loved that lesson too. I loved all of it. What can I say? I get very proud when I look back at it, because honestly, when I'm putting them together, sometimes it feels like it's going to be pure luck if I get through it, because there's so many ideas, but you just don't know which ones to pick sometimes. This was another lesson called Architecture, which is about texturizing in this very wonky Tim Burton, what do you call it, like building. He always has these big spiral hills and like a really ominous house on top of a spiral hill, or, you know, even the houses that aren't on the hills, the ones in Edward Scissorhands, all of the pastel dream houses just along the lane. I mean, those are ominous just because they're all so plain and they're all so uniform, and that can be its own kind of creepy. So I loved all this, but again, it was a bit of a choose your own adventure, the way that you put these together, and I loved that lesson too. I have to stop saying it. I loved it all. It was fun. The end. Let me just share the info. Here is the, what's this called? Signature 2. This was And Emily, That's All. This was from The Corpse Bride. I did a style swap. I'm not quite, what did I swap it with? It's The Corpse Bride. Oh, I swapped it with my style. I was like, I can't see what style this is. It's because it felt natural and familiar to me. This is my style. I took what was Tim Burton's aesthetic and put it into the way that I would do it. So obviously, very unbothered diva. Really love her. Gorgina. Here's where some of the journaling gets really hectic. This was our reveal pull tab. A lot of the time we have intro skits, we'll have to block off the camera on the iPad, and so we'll attach, it's usually a post-it note very precariously attached to the iPad, like it could fall off at any moment. Sometimes I'll put a little extra washi tape on it, and then we have a string, which ironically happened to be this cassette tape. I don't even know why. I think we had a mylar curtain for something. And you can still see the glitter from that. This intro skit, the one we did for Halloween, was wild. And we were throwing confetti everywhere for the Edward Scissorhands bit. And we had a whole backdrop reveal for one of them. It was insane. We had gotten so far out of control with those intro skits at that point. But yeah, we would yank it off, and usually I'd throw that stuff out. But it's such a funny part of the experience for me that I decided to keep it. Here, you won't be able to see this, but it's a whole list of a whole bunch of the drawings that I did for the sketch flicks. We call them sketch flicks plus because there's a little bit extra information that goes into them when they're a part of paid content, not just on YouTube, which I don't know the last time I did a sketch flicks on YouTube. The Nightmare Before Christmas one, essentially this is every single illustration I did throughout the movie. So I'll put the movie on, I'll just start drawing, record the whole thing, and you get to see everything that pops up. So there was a ton of it. I got so excited drawing through that movie. And then I did this final piece based on, oh, that's supposed to be stuck down. I did this final piece based on the sketch flicks drawings that I did. So that was fun. I'm gonna kill myself if I keep saying fun. I've got to stop saying it. It's really driving me nuts. Here is a piece of packaging, Wicked Eyelashes packaging from Spirit Halloween, and a cute little drawing under there. I think she's based off of that, if I remember correctly. I just wanted to do a chubby wonky version. We also did a random shoot at night out in downtown Anaheim with Steve's friend Ariel. I mean, she's my friend too, but we I didn't really know her as well as Steve did at that point. We dressed her up in Catwoman. The Catwoman costume was supposed to be Steve's costume for the live party, but it was a full latex costume. Like, it's the legit Catwoman from Batman Returns costume, the Michelle Pfeiffer, and it did not look appropriate. You gotta remember, we got like turn up on Zoom and we're just heads in a screen, and just Steve sat there in a full black latex it just did not look good. It looked very inappropriate. So we had to get rid of that, but it was fun. At least we gave it to Ariel and she could get some good use out of it. That was the one time I think we've nixed a costume, and it was fine. He went as Beetlejuice instead. And then we did Elton John and Freddie Mercury. Here is a part of the Beetlejuice in case of an emergency, draw a door. It's just fun. Sometimes I just love when those themes from the movies and the stories that we look at just work for journaling, as if we're not going to draw a door, we have to. And then inside the door was a love bug, and mine was The Nightmare Before Valentine's Day. So there was a lesson that we called, I think it was called The Nightmare Before Insert Holiday Here, and you had to pick a different holiday that wasn't Christmas and essentially do the Tim Burton Nightmare Before Christmas to that holiday. So mine was Valentine's Day. I had love bugs. I held all these other weird little love bugs and the skulls, the XOXO. I just felt like it all kind of worked for that spookiness, and I loved red, black, and white as well, but the pink in there just gave it such a Valentine's Day touch. Can I eat you? Please love me, if only for today. Those little candy hearts, wilted flowers. It was really fun to go and explore all of that stuff. And I thought the other one that would be really funny was The Nightmare Before St. Patrick's Day. I don't know why I felt like that one would really work. It's just because of the leprechaun, maybe. Where you had to pick a central character. Mine was Cupid, I think. Just like Jack Skellington, I think I picked this Cupid bear, teddy bear. It's hard to remember. I shouldn't leave so much gap between doing the course and flipping the journal because there are so many details I'm sure I've missed. Here are my lanches from the photo shoot, from They Leapt Off the Page. I just stuck them in and made this little random bat person out of it. There's my other lashes. They went on to her, which I believe was an Art Snacks thing. That looks very familiar to the Art Snacks stuff. Packaging. This was the choker. I don't know if I wore it. Oh no, yeah, my Lydia Dietz choker. Just velvet, glued it all in here. This is why I used signatures, because they were thin so I could pack in a lot of stuff and not feel like I was gonna, bust a journal. So it really did work out for that, I have to say. I think there were only like 10 pages per signature. This was 24 hours, and this was a stream of consciousness journal, literally from October 17th to October 18th, 2020. I started at 6:30 p.m. and I did all the way through 24 hours until 6:30 p.m. the next day. And it's really, really interesting to go through these because I've done this before and your brain just starts to go at some point. I can't even go through absolutely everything. Just think of it as a visual journey that we're going to go on for 2 seconds. But my sister did get engaged at that point. So that was huge already. Something really exciting to be able to journal about. I felt like cutting out I'm sleepy at 7 p.m. Then I stapled all the letters here. There's a lot of decoration that goes on in these. I colored in over a photo, went crazy with the washi. Even the back of these staples, I turned into little bats because they had the back hook of the staple. This reptar. It's 2:22 p.m. Make 2 wishes. Why do I want to eat everything? Oh goodness, and I did. I was eating my feelings. Wasn't everyone? It was 2020. Who went through 2020 and didn't gain weight? Answer that. So here is lots of fun little drawings. Loved this Furby. I'm just a Furby about to power off. I was really into Big Eyes at that point. Big Eyes was a film directed by Tim Burton about Margaret Keane. I loved the work, but we're diving into so much of the most obvious stuff that I wanted to work with. And at this point, he hadn't done Wednesday Addams either. So I was wanting to make sure I hit some really obvious Tim Burton stuff for me. So Big Eyes did not make it, but Big Eyes did make it into Burtonville 2. And that's where I'm kind of like, I still love Burtonville 2, but I guess, yeah, it's hard. I love them both, but there's something really special about the original one. And I think it was just because it was the first time I got to share it all, and I wanted everyone to know how much I had fun with it. I wanted everyone to know just how exciting it was to dive into Tim Burton's visual library of his own work, and how I just felt like he created with such like this childlike wonder and this kind of abandon, and there was still so much technique and there was still so much theory to a lot of it, but it was so effortlessly woven in and with this carefree approach. I was like, we just have to be able to do that. We have to be able to draw like him and just conceptualize like him. I think we'll all have so much fun if we do it. Here's a teeny tiny witch's hat. These banners were a part of the decoration as well. See, this is where the brain really starts to go crazy. I think even then I was trying to stay up super late and was doing a lot of the journaling like late at night as well. Because I was curious to know if, if my brain would kind of work differently. Praying for more lucid dreams. I was having a lot of lucid dreams as well. A black coffee from the Japanese bakery might wake me up. Maybe I can fly home in my dreams tonight. I get very homesick a lot, so it's normal that that's on my brain a lot. I have many questions about cats. Stupid. Imagine journaling this much always. Heaven. Yeah, I don't have the time to be doing that. I mean, I guess I do, but maybe I do. Maybe I do right now. Also, I don't want the time to be doing that. I want to be busy with other things. 24-hour stream of consciousness journaling it's for certain days. It's for certain times, periods in my life. Completed 6:30 p.m. October 18, 2020. That was my acai bowl. I did this deconstructed picture of this acai bowl from Lazy Bird. I absolutely loved it. I think this is so fun. I almost wanted them to ask me to create a menu for them so I could draw all the bowls deconstructed like that. Here's more of the Ikebana flowers that I just decorated this page with. This was also an activity, the topiary do's, the hairdos. You know when Edward Scissorhand cuts everyone's hair? Instead of having it as hair, I gave these templates, and it was the hedges, because he was cutting the hedges before he cut the hair. So combined them both, and basically we were just making shaped silhouettes and filling them with leaves. Thought it was really fun. Here's my choker. Yes, of course I thought it was fun. Everything's fun. I've got to stop getting mad at myself. I just don't have any other adjectives. Here's the monster on my shelf. Another activity. I think I sent people to look at shelves in their houses, or I think it was shelves, or I just chose my shelf anyway, but that you had to pick apart all the different elements that were on the shelf and then mash them together, collage them together to make a monster out of them. So I had the vines from my shelf, and there was little plants, random things, but mostly just interesting objects. And then this was the little monster that came out of it. I had this little swatch page down here. Some more packaging. This is Steve. I did the Beetlejuice, say my name 3 times, and then he appeared. We did these portraits in the living room as well. Look at his mustache. I forget he had that mustache. I like the mustache. He doesn't like it. I told him to grow it back. I think he says that he looks too much like his dad with his mustache. I thought it was fun. I was Lydia Dietz, and he was Beetlejuice. He collaged this together for our portrait. Fun fact, if you look really closely, underneath this lace muumuu, you can see I was sitting on a stool. That wasn't edited out. So everything else was kind of edited out to look like I was falling, but you can just see that stool right under there. And it took everything within me. I had to engage the half an ab muscle I had left at that point to get my feet off the floor for 2 seconds. That greasy hair as well. I was growing my hair out too. This is well on my way to my long hair journey. There was our Elton John, Freddie Mercury. And these were monsters just made out of random things as well. Tripod legs, my Lamy Joy fountain pen lid, nail polish body, ink bottle neck. I had a happy birthday sign, but I used the TB for Tim Burton. And then these were more of the mermaids, the Tim Burton mermaids. And these were all the same thing at the top of the page. The little monsters made out of things. That's a spray bottle you can see there. I think that was a part of, oh, those are the glasses. It's those glasses. A pen lid or a marker lid. Washi tape. That's an ink bottle, I know that. Scissors. Some things are really obvious to see. That was my paint palette. So that would be, I'd say that most of everything lives in these 2 journals, like a lot of the lessons, the main structure, the main content of everything, but there are a lot of journals here, the 3 other, what are they called? 3 other signatures. Forgot it the other time I said it too. These signatures have a lot of the working. So this is a layout of the Nightmare Before Valentine's Day. There'll be a lot of working stuff in here. like the live parties. The live lessons always look a little bit more unfinished, but that's mainly because we do them, you know, in half an hour live, so that we don't spend a ton of time on those. But they're still fun. We did trick-or-treaters in Swatch Dolls style. This is some of the stuff that I teach as we go through it. This was shading and hatching. We did this as a live lesson, the half Jack, half Sally face. I've done this for Luca as well, when he's the Pixar Luca, when he's the sea monster and when he's the human. This was another live lesson that gave most of us RSI, because I did not realize how much scribbling that would be, and that really hurt. It was really effective, but this is a huge scale. These are US letter size pages, so this is a lot. This is 17 inches of scribbling. Jack the Pumpkin King. More packaging. Tinkerbells. That was hilarious. The Tim Burton Tinkerbells that came out. Those ones really, I think that was the funniest thing that had come out of all of those lessons, and one of the things that I always think back on, how absurd it was. And then there was a full, so these were called Tinkerbells, Tim, and then one of them we called her Tankerbell, because she just looked like a tank. And there is actually a costume they sell online called Tankerbell, and I've been considering buying it and just showing it to you all one day. Like me in it, doing her as real life. Like they lopped off the page, but it's the Tankerbell version. I should go and look into it. I don't think the reason I bought it last time because it was expensive and I thought it was too expensive for a joke, but I could be persuaded into that. Here's just some quick sketches of things. I really wanted to do her, this Sally body shape thing, but it actually seemed a little too difficult to teach at that point. I was still making sure that a lot of the illustrative skills I was making people use were very, very, beginner friendly. But I did end up teaching it in Burtonville too. And again, so that's one of the benefits of doing it like the second one. I could assume that a lot of it was implied knowledge, so I could make the lessons a little bit harder. And people were very successful with those lessons too, so it all worked out the way it needed to. Here were the fonsters, but I also did a version here where I was using my hand, and I was making like the monsters out of my own hand. Never ended up doing that one, but it was an option. One of the Ikebana flower sculptures. I loved this one too. I loved all the modeled watercolor that just kind of bled out and bleeded everywhere. Bled. This is an itinerary to make sure everything's going on the days it needs to go. I'll always end up shading off things, and then I'll forget about it. At one point, I'll make a completely new list somewhere else, and then I'll start checking things off there. I don't think any of my lists have actually been fully checked off, even though I've done all of the work for all of the workshops. I should go and finish one and just check it off, because it would make me feel like I'd finished it. Just some reference imagery and some practice sketches. Here was another one. I think it was, must have been that. And this was the fonsters without, so that was with the letters, but this was just without any of the letters, using much simpler shape. I'm not quite sure if I used that to demonstrate, or if that was just something I was practicing with if the letters became too annoying. Here is another signature with some working stuff in it. Lots of animals coming up in the last one as well. Some more of the Tinkerbells. This one became really iconic. Absolutely unhinged, crazy. This is where we learnt that tiny teeth are a Tim Burton thing that we hate, but love. I hate tiny teeth, but it's the easiest way to make something look really sinister and Tim Burton-like. I think this is Tankerbell. Absolute tank. We were practicing with different silhouettes, but this was also a, to look at the type of mixed media that you apply, and how if you do one pass with something, you're going to get a certain effect, but if you do 3 or 4 passes with something and then you start adding different types of mixed media, how the effect can look a lot more finished. Even if you're not willing to, spend a lot more time on it, just going one pass over something is always going to look like you just hit it with one pass, but adding a few different layers, still keeping it very loose, will just make it look a little bit extra, like a little bit more rich, a little bit more thought and care went into it. And so people will just assume that you've, you know, taken more of an effort to it, which I guess you have. But in our brains, it doesn't seem like a lot because we're just adding some scribbles here and adding a dot marker here. And suddenly you're like, oh, wow, it looks like we did a lot more than we did. Here were the trick-or-treaters, the Swatch doll type scribble trick-or-treaters. Lots of different Tim Burton characters. I like the Edward Scissorhands little scissors. And this was that live lesson with the half Jack and Sally face. Very effective. That I did completely separately of the course. I think around Christmas time. And then another itinerary just to make sure it all worked out. You can see the things that I scribble out and I change. Another monster made out of random stuff. And this Tim Burton character. And we have the last signature here with this fluorescent orange ink for some reason. These were portraits. Oh, it was Frankenweenie. That was the pet portrait. I knew there had to be some Tim Burton attachment to it. This was a study page I did of animals. Kind of helpful because I'm not good at drawing animals. And so this really simplified a lot of it for me. I actually really, I referenced this too for animals. This was the Ikebana. Sometimes I go really deep into the, to the understanding of the lesson, even if it just has nothing to do with the final piece. Like, I'm not really going to sit there and explain flower arranging to people because we're not flower arranging. We're drawing a set of flowers that aren't even real flowers. Like, it's so stupid that I go into it. But sometimes my own curiosity develops and I end up learning a whole bunch of stuff that I'm just, you know, curious to know about from the lesson. And sometimes it helps. Sometimes it helps to know that there is a deeper meaning for things, and other times it's just fun to know things. But the Ikebana I really got into. I was watching videos and everything. I was like, I think I want to do this. But then I realized they're all real flowers and you do it a real way, and I was just having too much fun with the fantasy of it. So these were different types of vases I'd come up with. Little color scheme I wrote: black, white, and gold, and green. Architecture. Just some sample pieces of everything. This was a bit of content that was downloadable. It was a font. So the fontsters that I did, I actually made the entire alphabet and drew all of them and then made a font out of it that you could install on your computer. So I could type it up and actually make this font, which was really fun. And these were thumbnail sketches of those other big lessons that you saw in the journal. The Lydia Dietz scribble page and the Pumpkin King. Jack Skellington. This is our reference. This is the Ikebana shop with an E, shoppy. This was a set of the leaves that you could choose to stem your piece, and then these were the different types of florals. The blooms that you could use to make it look really Tim Burton-y. My original style files for the course, which I thought was good, but I felt like I could do a better job, so that's why I ended up doing it again. And that is something I will do that looks totally unnecessary, and I will say this, there's nothing wrong with this, but I do believe redoing it was the right thing. There's not many times where I've redone the whole thing and thought, oh, well, that was a waste of time. Most of the time I feel like my instinct is correct if I feel like I have to redo something. And I get really annoyed about it too, because I just think, why can't I be simpler? Why can't this just suffice? Why, it's fine. But in my head and in my heart, I just know I have to redo it. And I just think, well, if I don't redo it and someone asks something, and I'm just going to get so angry that I didn't do it. So I just do it. But I do sometimes think my life would be simpler if my brain was a little simpler. Here was just a page of compositions, a couple of things that I thought I might want to do based off of the Sketchflix episode that I did. I ended up going with her, the balloons for the birthday girl. I think it was about because Steve was having his party. I think that's why it was on my mind. More of those Tim Burton mermaids, another architecture piece. The Nightmare Before insert holiday here. I'd come up with I don't think I gave this page. I think I typed it up a lot nicer, if I remember correctly. I might not have done that, but I'm pretty sure I did. This was all the different holidays that I'd come up with, and then all of the different motifs that were in characters that you could use. So For Valentine's Day, all I could really think of was Cupid and a teddy bear. But Christmas had Santa Claus, Mrs. Claus, elves, reindeers, Rudolph the Grinch, Easter Bunny, chicks, the leprechaun, July 4th, eagle, Statue of Liberty. That one would be really funny. The turkey for Thanksgiving. Even Australia Day, Kath and Kim, Mui. I came up with color palettes as well. Like, this was a big reference sheet. This one took me ages, which was, you know, it's funny. I could have just let people figure it out. But again, I think there's that part of knowing that it's a workshop. People have invested a lot of money in it. I really go to the furthest mile I could go, to the nth degree. I make sure I cover all my bases just so that, you know, I do all the thinking and you do all the playing. Well, I do the playing too, but I have to do all the thinking. This is the Easter draw a door and open it, the nightmare before Easter. There was my bunny rabbit and his little egg. Carrots hanging from the roof. The eggs that were cracked. I thought that was fun. They looked like skulls, but they were cracked eggs. This was Stella's makeup chart. Stella did our makeup for the They Leapt Off the Page for our family portraits. So that was really fun. She did that makeup chart. This was the references that Steve pulled for the photos. So I liked that because it had Stella's creativity in there as a makeup artist. It had Steve's creativity in there as a photographer. And then it had me just being there as the model. This is live on the Lido deck ideas. Originally, I had a few different things that I wanted to try, but I did end up going with the Lydia Dietz, but even then I changed it from what I originally drew. I did end up going back and redoing a couple of these things. I actually did that on YouTube. I remember doing that one. I think I was looking at Disneyland. This was a part of the lesson. A lot of the time when I'm teaching, I need some other pages to just demonstrate certain things. And this was the lesson style files. When we first started, I wanted to make sure that people knew what it was all about. Sometimes I'll give myself a timeline as well. If you can see, it says here, Embarkation Day Live, 2 p.m. It'll say 2 p.m. Welcome and intro, 10 to 15 minutes. 2:15, talk through Virtual Voyage and show parts of #1 journal, 10 minutes. Sometimes I'll be very strict about it because if I've got so much to do, I need to stay on track. And Steve will give me a little, like, you know, next thing. But a lot of the time, it's pretty loose now. I usually get a good vibe for how long I'm going to take doing something, but back in those days, I hadn't taught live very much. I'd done all of Virtual Voyage 1, but it still felt like it was something I was learning as I was going, so I really had to kind of judge how it went every time. I still do to an extent. I'll get off and I'll ask Steve if there were some things that went better than others, and we have a very objective discussion about how it goes, but for the most part, I feel pretty confident to pace myself properly now. Some style generator sketches, and then, oh, my cupids. This was my different alternatives for the cupids. I loved this one, the love bug. I don't know why. I added him because I thought the bear was cute. Oh, this one plus this one. Yeah, I added him like this little thing that came out of his head. But to be honest, he could have just been like that by himself. He was so cute. Anyway, that took so much less time than I thought. I swear one of these flips went for an hour and 40 minutes once. We're just about 40 minutes over. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here are all of the Gorgina signatures from Virtual Voyage 2, Burtonville, our original. Thank you so much for watching this with me. If you would like to join Burtonville, the original, it is, again, Virtual Voyage 2. I'll list it in the description box below. There'll be a music... well, if you've already sat through this, I don't know why you would, but there is a music-only flip as well. So you can see that if you ever want to quick reference something, because I do obviously take my time with these. But I'm really happy to have shared that with you finally, all these years later. This is a collection of some of my most prized work that I've done in my workshops. And this one always feels very special. I always feel really re-inspired by this one. So I'm happy to have finally shared it with you. Thank you so much for watching. I'm sure I'll share with you Burtonville 2 sometime very soon. Until then, I have a whole bunch of other playlists. There's so many other journal flips in the journal flip playlist, but they're all out of, like, none of them are chronological. It's just whatever treasures are in there at this point. So I'm going to work on making sure that all the other Virtual Voyage journals are in there. Also, though, if you've ever been a part of the virtual voyage and you miss the debarkation day. I don't say always, but a lot of people do miss the last live stream. That is where I flip through everything and give you the 411 on all the behind the scenes. So make sure you go check those out. I have done work in this since then, so this is a bit more of an extensive flip, and for all intents and purposes, this is finished. I won't be adding anything else to this, so this is a fully finished flip, as is Burtonville 2. So I'm actually going to film that right now. Why not? All right, bye everyone.